Hey everybody, this is Toby Younis with the Gypsy Kiss. Stick with me a couple of seconds and we'll have a great conversation on how you can find Forrest Fenn's treasure in 1,000 years. Okay, so forgive me for that. I was trying to do three different things at one time. So we have a great panel tonight, and I think we have a great topic, and I don't want you to be concerned about the subject that I expressed earlier, which is how to find Forrest Fenn's treasure in 1,000 years. We're going to use that as a basis for our conversation. But before we start that, I'd like to have each of our panelists introduce themselves, starting with over to my right, Jonathan Jones.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Jones. I'm going by the name of Brit Chaser. I've started a YouTube channel. I've got one video on there at the minute that goes through my recent boots on the ground and my solve. I'm hoping to get a fair few more videos out in the coming weeks.
And did you said the Brit Chaser channel on YouTube, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Thank you, Jonathan, and welcome to the panel. Sean?
Sean Martinez, YouTube channel, Figuring Out Forrest. I am from New Mexico and just about 3.5, 4 hours away from my solution area.
Jason Michael?
I'm Jason Younis. I'm Toby's son and member of the team.
Shelley Carney?
And I'm Shelley Carney. I'm with the Gypsy Kiss and also with the Softer Side. And I've just posted our link, and please join us tomorrow at 7 p.m. for a live coaching session. We'll be talking about finding your treasure.
Wait a minute. I thought we decided we were going to move any of this Fenn stuff over to the Softer Side.
Treasure means many things to me.
All right. Yeah, that's what Fenn says. That's exactly what Fenn says. Rick?
I'm Rick McDonald. You know me as Illinois Ghost. You can find me by searching Illinois Ghost on YouTube or go to illinoisghost.wordpress.com. You can find my blog.
And it's a great blog, by the way. He's kept it for how long? When did you start that blog?
Oh, man, I don't know. It's been about 3 or 4 years now.
Yeah, it's a great blog. A lot of content, a lot of good stuff. So as I said, we picked a topic that was based on the conversation that we started on our Tuesday vlog. And the title of the vlog, as you probably recall, was How to Find Forrest Fenn's Treasure in 1,000 Years. And I cited an example, a fictional treasure that was hidden in the 1st century BCE. And then I started asking how we needed to keep thinking in that way, that even though it's only 8 years away from the point that he says that he hid the treasure, that a lot of the same principles apply, that we have to work in the context of that period, that we have to think as much like archaeologists and historians and maybe even anthropologists as we do searchers. And these are the people that I want to have that conversation with. And we'll start with those questions in just a moment. But Sean Martinez, taking the initiative, decided to write Forrest, and I'll let him tell you what happened. Sean, could you share your communications with Forrest with us?
So I did send Forrest a question in regards to the 1,000 years idea that we're discussing this evening. In addition to that, I sent him a question in regards to warm waters halt, what versus where, which he responded to. And I put a video up of that on my YouTube channel in regards to the roundtable discussion. But this in particular, I did ask him this morning, and he responded fairly quickly. I'll go ahead and just read it. Forrest, I will be on a live panel tonight discussing what the search could look like in 1,000 years. Would you be willing to share a word on this topic to add to the discussion this evening? And Forrest did respond. And his response was, the question is moot, Sean. This planet will not be suitable for habitation in 1,000 years. Signed F. So his response was basically, stating that it's moot, because his idea, based on this comment, in my opinion, is that It's not going to be suitable for habitation in 1,000 years, so we're not going to be worrying about treasure, or possibly nobody will be around in 1,000 years. So, with that type of response in regards to the 1,000 years, that leads me to believe that Forrest is leaning more towards the treasure being found a lot sooner than 1,000 years statement that he said previously.
Well, it certainly contradicts all the things that he said prior to this time, in which he has stated that he wanted it to last. He wanted the treasure hunt to last for 1,000 years. I made the mistake of saying unequivocally that he wanted the treasure hunt to last 1,000 years. That's not what he said. He said it could. He qualified it by saying it could last 1,000 years, but apparently it's not going to make any difference since it's going to be Book of Eli, baby. And it sounds like actually one of the few things that Forrest Fenn and I agree upon. So I am not going to argue with him on that. But it is rather, I guess, depressing in a way to start thinking about, like, maybe we're just wasting our time here thinking about whether or not it's going to be around in 1,000 years. And he says, no, it's going to be a mess, post-apocalyptic if we're lucky, non-existent if we're not. So what was your first reaction when you saw it, Sean, when you saw the response?
Well, my first reaction was that to him, that topic of conversation was, one that, we're discussing it because, as been mentioned, the 1,000 year possibility, and it's something that I think we all should think about because Forrest has said it. But now at the end of summer, pretty much the end of summer this year, he's made this statement that, it's not going to matter in 1,000 years.
Right.
Definitely won't matter to any of us searchers right now.
Exactly.
But I think taking the angle to actually look at what the search could look like in many years to come, should the treasure not be found anytime soon, is a good idea because, there's the potential for erosion, the potential for, pine needles and mud and rivers to swell and dry up. I mean, looking at it from the perspective of that this could go on for a long time, I think is a really good idea. His response was pretty basic for Forrest, saying, hey, it's not going to matter in 1,000 years. Basically, the question is moot. Basically, doesn't matter. So my first response was one of I actually laughed at it. It was pretty interesting to see that response.
Well, he does have some. It's an obvious point. It's and I don't want him to think that we're all thinking about living for 1,000 years so that we can look for his treasure. Most of us won't be around. We've got a generation here to survive, and if we find it in between now and then, well, then we find it. But I think really the next big inflection point in the search, if the treasure is not found, is going to be his passing. And not that I'm going to dwell on that, but I think that's going to change the rules of the game in the sense that we will have at that point what we have and nothing more. So I think a lot about that as well, about what impact his passing is going to have on the treasure. And as I said, without trying to sound negative about it, but it has to be one of the things that you do discuss. So Jonathan, the reason we brought up the topic is because I'm of the opinion that you need to behave like the treasure was hidden 1,000 years ago in order to focus your research, et cetera, et cetera. So what I'd like you to tell us, you're stuck with this problem of having to do all of this from the UK. How do you think about it? How do you think about the kind of research that you're doing in order to come get, if you're lucky, if you're fortunate enough to get here once a year to look for the treasure?
Sure. I guess, there are two trains of thought, I guess. I'm at a point now where I'm looking at three options. One, you can only get so many clues in, you have to see things from then on, boots on the ground. The other route, you can do most things from home except for perhaps the last few stages. And then the other option, route with research, being that the clues are something a bit more abstract, and then you're matching it to maps and the likes. If it's the first one, I guess it's the most susceptible to change over the years, I guess. If something, if the imagination aspect of this is you see something, if that's changed and you're stuck partway through, that has a major impact, which makes me think, I guess, because some of the areas could change quite a bit, I guess, unless the nature of them isn't that they change so easily, and that might be a good clue to it all. I'm more inclined to think that the solves for the clues are more to do with what you see on maps, and as a result, in future, you have access, hopefully, to all historical maps. And yeah.
I think we can safely conclude, that the physical nature of the clues will change over time. And I'm going to bring this back to you, Rick, because you've spent a lot of time in the same area, both a number of times and over a period of time. So first of all, I guess it's two questions. How much has the area changed since you started looking there? And how do you think time is going to impact the area that you're in, short of, the big natural disaster? I don't think we can actually plan for that. I think that's just going to happen whether it happens, whether we can control it or not. But how do you think your area has changed over the time that you've been searching? And how do you think it's going to change over a longer period of time if you don't actually recover the treasure?
Well, my area has changed quite a bit just since I started this particular spot. I went back and I researched what it used to look like, years and years ago, so I could compare, kind of see the differences. But when I hunt as if it's already been 1,000 years, or as if Forrest has already passed away and he's, that's how I hunt. I don't hunt as if, I'm waiting for the next clue to come out or anything like that. So basically, I paid a lot of attention to my area, and every detail. I can tell when a single rock's been moved or something around my spot, So, but I do notice things have changed. The water's changing directions from, where I'm at. It don't go the same way it did before. It's constantly changing. I noticed like rocks that have slid down hillsides and stuff that ain't there no more. So yeah, I mean, it does change, and it's going to make a big difference in 1,000 years.
So one of the reasons that I brought up this idea that we should think like archaeologists and historians when we were looking for a treasure, and I used the example of the treasure, the fictional story that I created for a treasure that was hidden in the 1st century BCE, over 2,000 years ago. And the point that I was trying to make is that we have to commit to the context of that period. So Jason, when it comes to the context of the period, even though we're only 8 years beyond when he claims he hid the treasure and wrote the book, how much flexibility do you think we have as searchers, only 8 years away from the hiding of the treasure, to ignore the context and just say, well, he said this yesterday? Is that how much of that is part of the strategies as you think about developing your solutions?
Well, it's an interesting question. I think it also brings up the idea of where people are and how they approach this search. If you talk to a true poem purist, the things that you're bringing up really don't affect, you've got the poem, you've got the book, and time will not change that. The only issue would be that because of just the extreme passage of time, for some reason, that information does not become available. And then you're down to literally somebody just coming across it on a random dig at some point. But to be honest, that's not going to disappoint Fenn. That's one of his potential things he's looking for, is someday somebody uncovers this, like the Rosetta Stone, and wouldn't that be a neat thing? So, but as far as us, 8 years in, I think actually the biggest factor we have is that the internet allows propagation of information at such a high rate, and that the quality of the information is horrible. And that's nothing against any particular YouTuber, but essentially, from the point of view of an investigation, nothing is vetted. people look at Google as, wow, what a huge facility. Look what I can do with this. But the truth is that we, in our search and in the things we have produced to convince ourselves about the search, have essentially muddied the effective waters of all of that information that we could glean. So now, well, let's say when the search first came out, if you had typed in a Google search that said something like warm waters fishing, you'd have come up with the New Mexico regulations and a few other states that would have something like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. And if you type that in today, you're going to get 40 different blogs. You're going to get all kinds. You know, it's like telling the students back in the day to look up President Bush and then telling them, you know, make sure you put in president. Okay. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it's changed what the search is going to bring back to you. So.
Are you picking on me? And it's honestly the warm waters thing. No. Is that a okay?
No, I just want to relate to you with my answers.
So, Sean Martinez, we've talked a little bit about how the environment, how weather and nature is going to change the environment. At what point, and all I need here is a rough estimate, of course, nothing, because none of us actually know. But at what point do you feel like the clues that represent the physical features that Forrest has identified for us are no longer valid, that the physical features have somehow changed significantly enough that they're useless to us? Is that 10 years, 100 years, 500 years? At what point do we have to start worrying about that?
Well, based on my solutions, more than one, at this point, I think it would take a really long time. I would say within the hundreds of years. I think Fenn did a really good job selecting the clue locations after he knew where he was going to hide the chest. Mm-hmm. I think is really key in homing in on those clues. The physical features that I've identified can last for a very, very long time. And I think that's what he intended. He said that he had changed the poem, over time. There may have been different clues that he removed intentionally. I believe he did a really good job putting it together. But, being in the mountains north of Santa Fe, as I have, out in the woods, whether it be national forest or wilderness, wherever it's at, there are areas out there that I believe that I've come across that appear to be undisturbed for a very, very long time. And if the chest is in one of those areas, I believe it would be, it's hard for me to believe that man would go into that area and change that in a place that he selected. I think he took that into account, and all of us are searchers. We've been out there and we've seen what it looks like. Mm-hmm. I think these features could last for a few hundred years, if not longer.
Let me take a quick break before going over to Jono, because I do have a question that I'm not quite sure exactly how I want to configure. So I need to think about that. So let me take a quick break while I'm thinking about it. So the first thing, ladies and gentlemen, the phone line is not on tonight. And the reason I didn't turn the phone line on, as I mentioned in my lineup video on Monday, is because I felt like a phone conversation at this point would slow down the pace of our panel. It's not just me and the chat room. It's the other 5 members of the panel, and I don't feel like I want to slow it down for them. But you can send a text to the 1-800 number, and if you'd like to ask a question of the panel, please feel free to send a text. In addition to that, Shelley is monitoring all 4. I assume you're monitoring all 4 of the. How's it coming along in terms of monitoring, Shelley?
Well, just fine. I'm skipping back and forth because it's all we're really getting comments on is the YouTube channel.
Is the YouTube. Okay. Well, we've got to figure out how to fix that. But if you do get a question, please let us know. Give me the old Zoom raised hand, and I'll make sure we go back to you. But I do want to say to the panel that we have gotten our first question via text message. It's from our good friend Joel Lewicki, who you all know. And Joel says, from what Forrest Fenn has said, why do you think one could follow the clues in 1,000 years if the clues...
Oh, no. And Joel said...
Where did I pick that up? Hold
That
on.
was me. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. Let me repeat it. From Joel Lewicki, from what Forrest Fenn has said, why do you think one could follow the clues in 1,000 years if the clues won't be around if there are changes? Jonathan?
I don't think you can. I think if some major aspects, I mean, you could possibly miss one clue solve, and maybe with a little bit of luck you can hop over to the next one. But I don't know. I think if one major one's gone, there's a real chance that you just can't find the treasure other than stumbling across it or future technologies enabling you to get to it.
Well,
so,
I'm gonna add to that. I'm gonna add to that, and I'm gonna ask an open question right now. But I don't want you to answer it because I want Rick to answer. I want everybody to answer Joel's questions, and that is, what if the elements that are represented that represent the clues? A good example would be a home of brown is a pool of brown trout. I'm just using that as an example. But what if those elements aren't physical? What if they were maybe metaphysical? And I'll explain to you what I mean in just a minute. Rick, let's go back to Joel's question. What makes us think that the clues will be around in 1,000 years and the things that represent the clues are going to be around in 1,000 years?
Well, that's kind of like one of my main thoughts. You know, it is what it is. It's a treasure hunt. You know, I think the biggest part is going to be documentation, the stuff we leave behind. You know, like you just think about D.B. Cooper. You know, people have been looking for that money for a long time. It ain't even been 100 years yet. But if you were searching for that, it's nice to know that, you know, the only money ever found washed up on a beach somewhere. So it's that kind of documentation. It's not uncommon. It's a treasure hunt. You know, people find stuff. If you found something that you know definitely that Forrest Fenn put there, you're going to remove it. You're not going to leave it for someone else to stumble across. Yeah. It's, you know, it's just natural. It's a treasure hunt.
Right. So, Jason, let's go to look at it another way. In 1,000 years, which of the following will still exist, excluding us, right? So I'm going to give you A, B, C, and D. In 1,000 years, which will still exist? Fenn's treasure, the list of clues, the physical things that they represent, or people who have any interest in all of this? Or is Fenn right? It's all just going to be gone.
Well, I got kids. I can't say it's all going to be gone. I got to hope that we're going to figure out something, go to a, you know, hydrogen-based system or something, make that big turnaround, whatever it is. I got to have faith in it. I think we've shown that things can last that kind of measure of time. They're between, you know, historic preservation, artifacts, the kinds of sites we've found. And certainly, I mean, he knew what he was doing. Bronze, you know, I mean, bronze, mostly gold. There could be some, when you're talking about 1,000 years, there could be some items that are affected through just natural things, corrosion, what have you. But the essential bits of it, the things that are going to be really fun to grab and hold, those things are going to last every bit of that time. And I do believe that just like any great puzzle, you know, that's gone down through history, that the core chunks of this puzzle are, I think, are going to make it.
All right.
And I think in our modern world, with our ways of preserving data and trying to pay attention to what's important, and you know, I've seen guys that are looking at things like you know, how long does a burned Blu-ray disc last from an archival point of view, from being able to actually retrieve that data again, and it actually wasn't as long as you'd think. You know, there was degradation, but the point is, we're thinking about that,
right?
So we're trying to come up with answers for we're producing data and information at a rate that humanity has never done before.
Right.
So now we're starting to ask ourselves, which one of these bits do we want to be our Rosetta Stones? Which one of these things have to stand that
test of time?
But I think puzzles like this, I mean, if nobody's found that chest, I think the value is only going to increase over time, and therefore the interest in it and the importance of the information connected to it will also do the same.
Okay. Jonathan, I should point out to everyone that you in the UK, it's what, 2 in the morning there?
It is, yeah. I'm full of coffee.
All right. Well, then let me ask this question of you, because it's purely hypothetical, but I'd like a response, and I'd like the others to respond to it as well. And that is, we have always assumed that there is a physical representation of each one of the clues. And again, I'm going to use as an example the home at Brown. You know, could be everything from a beaver lodge to where grizzly bear. We've always expected that everything is going to have a physical component to it. That when you look for the blaze, there's actually going to be a blaze there. What are the chances that when Fenn created these clues, he created them not to represent something physical, but something researchable? And I don't like using the word metaphysical because it's hard to define, but something that's not physical, but it's something that you can research and find, but it's not physical. And let me give you a good example. The point at which where warm waters halt is the Colorado border, right? That's not a physical thing. It's metaphysical in the sense that it's documented in some survey that was done in 1875 or something like that. What if all the clues were not physical, but metaphysical? That the blaze is not someplace. It isn't the proverbial white quartz streak in a granite background, but it's something else that's not quite tangible but researchable. What are the possibilities?
So I mean that's the best outcome, I guess, in the future, in the sense that, presuming this, all this information is preserved, these videos are preserved, you've got things like Wayback Machine for the internet. That's the best outcome. You can look back and you can put yourself at a point, what was released at the point, 3 years after he'd released the first book, 5 years later, 6 years. So I think that's the best outcome. I guess what's not clear is, how many of the clues are like that, I guess. I mean, some of his quotes suggest maybe 3 aren't. I think some others suggest that you could probably get right to the blaze. There have been some contradictions in that. I guess that's my hope, being so far away. But I've got the feeling that the last piece, the blaze, is that, and that's the most susceptible to change. So you could get all the way there, and hopefully the search area is so small when you get there that even if that had been destroyed, moved, or buried under something, you could at least have a chance. If the treasure's been buried, you probably haven't got so much of a chance. So, but yeah, I think it's the best outcome if that is the case.
Sean Martinez, same question.
So basically, the way I take that is the implications are the clues may not be physical, but metaphysical, correct?
Metaphysical in the sense that they are not tangible. They aren't, physically tangible. You can, yeah.
So perhaps it's not all of them are a what, but in fact, some of them are a where. They're a location. They're not necessarily a, like you said, a granite cliff face or something like that. But perhaps, just like the first clue, in my opinion, it's a where, not necessarily a what. And if looking at the clues in both lights, we're bound to come up with the right answer along the way, with how many people are in the community right now searching. If we're looking for the clues as a where and as a location, then it's very possible that a lot of people will find out one of the 9 clues, if not all, sooner rather than later.
Rick, what do you think about that possibility?
Well, in my search, some of the stuff is actual physical, but a lot of it, I think it's instructional. It's a what, where, and a how. You know, it's something that you have to figure out, and I believe it's just instructions. And if you get the right area, I think that the instructions will make sense as you follow.
Mm-hmm. Jason,
But
physical versus metaphysical.
That's an interesting time to ask me. I'm really kind of getting. I've been doing a lot of just listening to the poem just over and over.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost in like a sing-song form.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really getting. It's changing the way I'm thinking about it, and I would say that the change is definitely moving more towards a blend of very physical and metaphysical to much more metaphysical overall. I do think that would actually stand the test of time better. But my one big issue is I started moving towards the idea of the blaze being very, very sun related. And the issue with that is, there's those references to the cold, which suggests winter, which suggests a fairly small solar window in any given day. And B, it suggests that you might have to be in the area within a, few hour range of the day or something like that. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It opens up all kinds of additional questions that, but I think he did his homework. I really do. I think that, he has that mind of a searcher. He knows what it's like to reach into the ground and pick up something that was left from a millennia ago.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so, and he wanted at least the chance that could happen. And he guaranteed it with the bells. You put them 3 feet into dirt with no reference point whatsoever is where those sit. It's going to be a while before somebody comes across those ones randomly.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So he knew what it would take. And I think he took that into account. I trust that he took that into account. And I think it's one of the reasons why, by the way, it turns it's not going to be found this summer. So much for a gut feeling.
So much for the gut feeling, huh?
There's a lot of us doing this, and we're pulling apart all these details, and in some areas it feels like kind of a stalemate. And I think there's a reason for that. I think that it's not just going to be a step-by-step, oh, there's the rock, there's the house, put in right here, hey, there's the canyon, and you just doodle your way down to the chest. I think we killed that our first time out. So
yes, we did. Thank you for reminding me.
Hey, what are sons for?
Shelley, you've got a question from the room?
Yes, I have a few questions.
Go ahead.
So since you're on the topic of metaphysical, I'll start with Lori James's question. What would be an example of a metaphysical blaze?
So, Lori, I think that's why I was hesitant to use the word metaphysical. I think what I should maybe describe it as physical versus anti-physical rather than metaphysical. And what I mean by that is, and I'll go back to my warm waters, my definition of warm waters, which is on the Colorado border, right on the Rio de los Pinos. To me, that's not a physical location. I can get there without being at the physical location. I can be there because it is anti-physical. And another example, instead of the home of Brown, the anti-physical of the home of Brown would be an extrapolation of something he writes in the poem that gives me an indication of what that location is, with coordinates or graphics or whatever, but it isn't. Instead of looking for a physical home of Brown, a river where there's a bunch of brown trout that are constantly there. Instead of that, it would be a location pulled out of a home of Brown that I could refer to and look for, independent of whether or not it was a river with fish in it. So I'm. That's why I was hesitant to use metaphysical. It may not be metaphysical as much as it is, and another word I don't want to use is ethereal. I'm going to say anti-physical is the best way that I can describe it. How I can define it. Let me, before I go back to you, Shelley, I've got a couple of questions from the text line. Let me see. Oh, and by the way, for those of you that are calling in, you're going to go straight to voicemail, and I can't play those voicemails tonight because, as I said, I don't want to slow down the panel. I can take a text, but no calls, no voicemails, okay? So let me get this. So this is a question from the text. Do any of you think Fenn would have buried his chest where it could get covered relatively easily by flood, mud, avalanche, collapse, etc.? And this is from GL Cannon. What do you think, Rick?
He said he thought of everything. I honestly don't think that he would bury it to where it would get covered and nobody'd be able to get to it. Especially, you know, like his family. You know, originally that's what this kind of treasure hunts were designed for. People would hide their belongings, and it would be in order for their family to go back and be able to find it. So I don't think he'd bury it to where it would be covered by, you know, a landslide or anything like that.
What do you think, Sean Martinez?
Based on the places that I've looked, I believe that it could be a possibility for something to happen that wouldn't necessarily destroy it or put it in the position of being unfindable. However, I believe that there's the potential for something to occur in or around the area. I mean, if you stop and think about it, there are bears in the wilderness. There are wild animals in the wilderness. And I mean, it wouldn't be impossible for a wild animal to come along and you know,
give it the old nudge.
Give it the old nudge, knock over the chest, give it a sniff, whatever it may be. Then again, he may have thought of that, since, I mean, we all believe that he thought of everything. He may have thought of that. It may be hidden in a way that would prevent something like that. So I don't know. It's up in the air. I believe anything's possible. But
what do you think, Jonathan? Do you want me to repeat it?
No. It's his special place. He could have found this when he was a child, and the amount of years that this special place has been preserved and is still fit to hide his treasure. In that, he will have thought about, you know, what's the changing condition and the likes. Could have been from very young, could have been from the 80s. So I think it's a place that isn't so susceptible, and he knows that.
I think that's a good description. Jace, what do you think?
So I just want to, you know, when we were talking about longevity and location, I do want to make one point, and that is, given the options for looking at the, you know, the United States or the potential places to hide the treasure as biomes, given the options, the southwestern desert and the Rocky Mountain Range are fairly stable biomes. And, you know, an example of that is if you go out to Chaco Canyon Cultures, beautiful ruins that are out here that are from before the Puebloan people. And I was out there one time, and this ranger did this great thing. He was into photography. He recreated the oldest images he could find of the site. And what he found was things even like trees literally did not budge over hundreds and hundreds of years. And he used a program to fade in from the past so that essentially in seconds time you would fade over 400 years. You know, it was incredible. And you think about that kind of stability. You think about the Chaco Canyon ruins that are still there. He picked the right area to put something that he wanted to last that kind of time without something as simple, you know, as compared to something like an estuary or floodplain, or I'm trying to think of like the area in the Everglades. That's what I'm thinking of. You know, I mean, bury something in the Everglades and tell somebody to find it in 600 years. Good luck.
Yeah, no.
You know, everything will have changed in that period of time. But out here, you can put a rock under a crevice and somebody's going to be able to walk up and find that rock in a long time down the road.
I have a sense that there are going to be some features that change as a result of nature, wind, water, et cetera, but there are lots of places where that could only be affected, like what he suggested at some point. You know, he said it could be an earthquake could happen and it would change the area. But I think it would take something like that. I don't think it's a big physical, you know, big just regular wind and weather. I think I agree with Sean in the sense that, yeah, it could get covered up. It could be small changes in the grand scheme of things. But as Jonathan said, if he found a niche in a place that he had first discovered perhaps when he was a child and it was still there when he was 80 years old, that's a good indication that it'll last at least our generation, if not another. Shelley, let's go back to the room, see if you have any questions from the room.
Yes. So I have this one from Facebook. It's from Tom Hardy. And he would like to move forward and say, a few years ago, Forrest said that he was actually surprised that no one found it yet. That's a paraphrasing. This indicates to me that the solution is much simpler than we project, and overcooking the poem explains the delay. So let's talk about the different angles or methods to solving the poem and beyond. For example, I believe that the poem will only get you so far, and then you have to listen to everything else that he has said. So it's not exactly a question, but it's an opportunity to address, I suppose, different angles or methods to solving the poem and beyond.
Yeah. So let me take that, but I do have something else that I wanted to ask the room, and I just what you were talking, I had it in my head and then I forgot it. So we have heard Forrest say on several occasions, and I had the quotes. In one case, he said, "Don't overcook the poem." In another case, he said, simplify it. And then in another case that I found today, he said, you're simplifying it to don't make it so, you're oversimplifying it. So Jonathan, in the context of where we are today, 8 years away from that treasure, 350,000 searchers looking for 8 years. What are we doing? Are we simplifying, oversimplifying, or not? Let me see. Yeah, are we oversimplifying or undersimplifying? Maybe that's the best way to put it. So what are we doing wrong?
Funny you should ask. I emailed Forrest a few days ago, actually, slightly frustrated as a new searcher, going over and over all of his comments over the years. And there seems to be an air of talking to the searcher of the day. So he's collecting a load of background noise from forums, and he's trying to just edge people on a little bit. And the danger with that, of course, is people might move on, and then he gives a hint that helps them, and imagine they're going through the clues or something. So what I put to him was, and I email him all the time, he never responds, but he did respond on this one. I put to him that it was unfair, and it needed to be leveled as a playing field, in the sense that things like, I don't know, a word is key. So is he talking to people who are quite mature in their souls and they need to apply that to the later clues? Or me coming in now, I think, oh, do I need to apply that to the whole poem? And I may go down 1,000 rabbit holes and think that Warm Waters Halt can't be something very simple, Madison Junction, this and the other. It has to be something a bit more abstract. And he replied and said, thank you for the insight, Jono. I will have a think about it. So,
wow.
So.
Nice.
I think there is a danger that if you go outside of his original, read the poem, read the book, read the poem, read the book, you go down so many rabbit holes.
It was in a way he responded to me. We did a video over a month ago, and in the video I claimed that I thought he had over-engineered the thing, and he had underestimated how much over-engineering he had done. And he took offense to that. I heard from him, and I heard from several other people that, if you just do what I tell you, which is read the book, read the poem, you'll be fine. That's not working. 350,000 people, 8 years, read the book and read the poem actually hasn't resulted in anything. What do you think, Sean? If I go back, undersimplified, oversimplified, where are we?
Well, I think everybody's doing a little bit of all of it. I mean, you have some that undersimplify it and end up just having a family picnic when they go out. I believe some of those people may be included in the 350,000 searchers who've gone out there. Whether and I don't mean to be offensive, but whether you can consider them as legitimate, real searchers. They know about the poem, they know about the treasure. They go out to some area, they look around for maybe an hour, and then they call it a day, and then they enjoy whatever else it is. they may be undersimplifying the poem. Then you have others who really pour everything they possibly can into it. They're turning the heat way up on their solutions and their resources, how much they spend, and they may be overdoing it a little. So I think you have a broad spectrum of the different types of searchers out there that may be approaching it differently. His intent was to get people out in the wilderness. And in a way, we've come completely full circle, because not all of us can be out in the wilderness all the time. So we end up on the forums, or we end up on YouTube. We end up discussing these things via YouTube videos, which is all great because it's expanding the community. So I think at this point in time in the search, I think right where we're at is perfect, because the treasure's still out there. There's people interested, people who've given up. There's new people coming into the search. So it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun for a lot of people, and it's getting those who otherwise would not have out into the woods, out into the forest, looking for a treasure of all things.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
yeah.
Kids grow up dreaming about doing stuff like that, and now there's a real treasure.
We have a chance out there.
Yes.
Yeah. Rick, are you undersimplifying or oversimplifying?
Am I undersimplifying or oversimplifying?
Well, no. let me put it another way. Are searchers, generally speaking, undersimplifying or oversimplifying, in your opinion?
Well, I kind of feel that they're going both ways. I've seen, some people that I think they're just thinking it's too simple. They're just, jumping in the car and running out.
Mm-hmm.
They know exactly where it is the first time they read the poem.
Mm-hmm.
But then I think there's other people that are just looking way too deep into it. I mean, stuff like this right here, this documentation. I think this is how Forrest is documenting. This is the stuff he wants to stick around. There's something in there.
The stories.
There's something in there, and that's kind of what I talked about, documentation. But when I think of a treasure hunt, like if I think, oh, Captain Kidd buried a treasure, all right, and somebody told me, hey, it's at this spot. Well, the first thing I'm going to be looking for is the same thing everybody else is going to be looking for before they go. And what is that? You're going to be looking for a map. That's what I think he's trying to tell everybody to do.
We need the map. And you apparently have a very secret map that you mention every once in a while, but have never shared.
I got what I think is.
Oh, okay. All right. So, Jason, let me ask it to you in a different way. Yeah. If a new searcher came up and asked for your advice, would you tell them that it's not hard and don't oversimplify it, but it's not hard and don't undersimplify it? What would you say to them?
I think I'd start by saying, "Yar, I'm here to gaze upon Fenn booty." Sorry, that's a Shelley thing. You can ask Shelley about that.
No, Shelley, I knew she was going
to... here's the great thing about this search. I don't think anybody's behind the curve. I think if you've come to this search yesterday and you're willing to pay attention to what is making sense, this panel and the people that are in this chat room represent people who have really parsed these things and put a lot of thought and intelligence and experience into this. If those are your guideposts and markers, you're not that far behind any one of us, because none of us has walked out of that forest yet. Mm-hmm. But going back to what Jonah started on and everything, I wanted to say that I felt like one of the dangers was, one of the biggest dangers, especially for a new searcher coming into this, is taking his very generalized hints that he will give from time to time, or comments, and immediately applying that to yourself. Okay. Let's go back to the 200-foot person, right? I mean, if you thought, shit, darn it, I've written to him, in the past 3 months, and he says that. What if I'm the 200-foot guy, and you go and basically retrace every one of your recons during that period, Mm-hmm. And I think it's a huge danger when he starts talking about people aren't paying attention to a word that's key. Well, with as many searchers that are out there and as few words there are in the poem, you could probably find a champion for every single word in the poem. You know,
Yeah.
There were people that was like, hey, the word is it, and other people that were really out there that was like treasure. It's treasure.
Hey.
So you know, so I think those kind of things are the things that might be dangerous to watch out for. And the one thing that I think is one of the biggest and best hints that he's given was that suggestion to go look at that video about
the backwards bicycle.
I think, especially now that I'm listening to this thing, just literally the audio of it over and over and over again, it puts you in this headspace that's different than just reading. When you read, it's a very logical, very visceral thing. But I don't think that I think this poem is the equivalent of like those old what do they call them? Like the third eye or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Remember for a while they had those images and you'd have to like stare at them and go damn near cross-eyed, and then all of a sudden you'd be like, oh yeah, it's a frog, you know.
Yeah.
I think this poem is the mental equivalent of that. You can't literally parse it out piece by piece. You need to absorb it and go back, and that's why he actually said, you know, read it through, read the book, then go back, read it through a bunch of times, go back and read the book. And what that gives you is not like, oh, well, is page 62 the hint? Or, you know, look at this drawing. It's got a, you know, the two Mark 82 snake eyes are double X's and they look like they're marking two spots, you know. I don't think it's like that. I think it's going to be something where we really have to expand our mind around how we're intaking the poem and parsing information from it.
By the way, I didn't mention this earlier, but that black background that you put up tonight really brings out your eyes.
Why, thank you, Father.
Shelley Carney, question from the room.
Okay. I don't know if you already answered this, so I apologize.
Okay.
But Joel Lewicki wants to know how many of your clues will last the 1,000 test of time? I guess he means 1,000 years.
Let's all answer that. Jono, how many of your clues will last the test of the 1,000 years of time?
Some of them require a bit of background research. That's still available. So everything bar. Well, I think I have the blaze as well. So everything, yeah. Yeah,
they'll last 1,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to survive that, if you were to come, what is Shelley call it? Reincarnation. If you were reincarnated in 1,000 years, you could work your clues, your poem, and your clues.
You know, the landscape would have changed, so you'd be working from where things were from old maps. But yeah,
yeah. Sean.
Well, I was just mulling them over in my mind just now, and you know, based on what I've seen in the field, the things I've come across, I believe that the clues themselves, if not in as a whole, but in part, would last 1,000 years. Now, the hints may be another issue, whether the hints that he's given us sprinkled throughout the book can last that long. But the clues themselves, I think, and I could be wrong, that he's referred to them as maybe not as a whole, but in part as geographical locations.
Yeah.
And so that being the case, that they are locations, based on what I've seen, I'd say more than likely, yes. The clue didn't last that long.
Rick?
I'm kind of doing the same thing Sean was doing. Actually, running it through my head, I'd say 2 of them, time doesn't matter, everything else be gone.
Yeah.
In my solution.
Jason?
Well, unfortunately, I don't know if your fishing rigs are going to make it the 1,000 years.
Don't even. And I'm gonna. You know what? I'm gonna prove you wrong in just a minute. So stick to your.
Are we going to be around for the 1,000 years?
Yeah.
No, I think there's a lot of. So here's an interesting thing. Okay, there's a lot of people who heavy loads and water high is essentially some kind of mechanism, whether that's a major highway with truck traffic, carrying logs and whatever, what have you, out of the forest, or a train trestle, or what have you. Well, that might not make it the 1,000 years. In the case of like a train in northern New Mexico, that's a privately owned and funded operation, and it could go under like any corporation within years. So so it brings up some interesting some points on it's not just the treasure that has to make it the 1,000 years. It's the clues and the guideposts.
Yeah, that's right.
That would also have to make it the 1,000. But again, I think there comes a point where Fenn could have said, well, what do I care? If it makes it at least 100, I did my part.
Right.
After that, I still get the thrill of it's going to take somebody a century before they come across, or however, before he comes across it. And then won't that be a damn neat thing when they find my bio in there?
Right. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to answer the question, and I'm going to use my example of where warm waters halt, Jason Michael.
Let's hear it.
Joel Lewicki has picked up on the point that I was trying to make in the program yesterday. The simple fact of the matter is there is nothing that implies, and I think we have to divide the world into two things. One is the clues that are written in the poem, and between them some interpretation for some kind of location, whether it's physical or anti-physical. So the clues represent somewhere, right? And Fenn once said when asked, and I'm going to paraphrase here, I'm not quoting him precisely, he said, the clues didn't exist when I was a boy, but the locations they represent did. And what I think he means by that is very simple. The clues are what are in the poem, and the reason they didn't exist is because he didn't write them as an adult, until he was an adult.
Absolutely.
I think that if I was alive in 1,000 years and I had the poem, I could find the treasure, because what I would do is exactly what I said yesterday. I would behave like an archaeologist, a historian, and an anthropologist, and I would go back to this period, the beginning of the second millennia, and I would look at and find the definition of warm waters halting in the context of the period of 2010, and that the Colorado border, which may or may not exist at that time, which happens to be where my warm waters halt in 2010. And I think, I think the clues may not, the clues, while they'll last because they're in the poem, if I have a copy of the poem, I will have the clues. The physical places they represent at that period of time may have changed. But what I would do is then go back to this period, 2010, and determine where on whatever map of that world then, where the Colorado border would have been, on a map. So even though the physical surface of the geography has changed, the fact is there is a document somewhere that says where the Colorado-New Mexico border was. And so to answer Joel, I think the clues can last 1,000 years because they're in the poem. I think the physical locations that are represented in Fenn's mind may not make it that long, but I think the interpretation of them through archaeological and historical work could be translated into what is that period and that time. And that, thank you, Joel Lewicki, was the point that I was trying to make, that I thought I made in yesterday's show. Oh, man, am I glad I got that off my chest. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for putting up with that. Okay, so we got to close up at 7:59, and I had one last question from you, and I stole this from Chris Matthews. And the question is, and I'll give you a second to think about it, tell me something I don't know about this treasure hunt. Let's start with you, Jono.
Oh, crikey. Something you don't know.
Tell me something I don't know. Something that you don't that I don't. Something that you do but I don't.
I don't know. I mean, the thing that's hitting me at the minute is just the idea that we're all going about it the wrong way.
Okay,
I think,
right.
Yeah.
You're right. I believe that we're all going about it the right way. Sean Martinez, tell me something I don't know.
Oh boy, Toby, you know quite a bit.
Well, tell me something you think I don't know.
One of the things that has crossed my mind is all of us are completely and totally trusting Forrest with the poem and the location that is the only way to find this chest. That is the only way that anyone is ever going to locate this treasure chest somewhere in the mountains north of Santa Fe. It's crossed my mind on a number of occasions that there is the potential and possibility to be able to locate it in a different way. And I know that may be controversial. However, I believe that the possibility is there. All of us are, of course, following the treasure map that he's contained in this poem. And, of course, that's going to be the easiest way, but no chest so far from anyone. So, I believe it's reasonable to believe that there are other ways of locating this treasure chest aside from following all 9 clues to the location. Now, utilizing the clues and the book as evidence of a sort could assist, but opposed to walking right in the front door, from Warm Waters Halt all the way to the Blaze, I believe that there may be another angle that can be taken in order to locate the chest. And like I said, that may be controversial, but just something to think about.
Well, it was something I didn't know, and that was the plan. So I'm going to skip over Jason for just a moment and go to Rick. Rick, tell me something I don't know.
Boy, I don't know. Are you going to go too?
Yeah. No, it's my show. I'm not going to do this. You're supposed to tell me something I don't know.
All right.
Go ahead.
Do you know Tulsa's original name was Toledo?
No, I didn't know that. I like that. Tulsa's original name was Toledo, and then Ohio got mad, or what?
Yeah. Yep, used to be originally. The name's still there.
I don't know why the story is, but yeah, okay, we'll do it. Jason Michael, I'm hesitant to ask you this question because I'm sure you have more than one answer. Tell me something I don't know.
Related to the chase?
You know what? You know what? I'm gonna, since you're my son and you probably know as much about me as anyone, I'm opening it up. Tell me something I don't know.
I'm okay with the chase.
Okay, all right, okay.
So I think anyway, and what I'm looking into now, I think there are some very different ways you can look at the poem that Yersal, I don't think is taken into account. For example, taking the canyon down may not be a direction for us to follow. It may be just a continuation of the idea of where the water went.
Okay, so I bought you some agave sweetener thing. I got the Keurig. Come over. Let's have a cup of coffee. And,
are you luring me in?
Yeah, and let's have that conversation, okay?
All right.
So let's go around the horn, starting with Rick. Yeah, you guys say your good nights and tell people where they can find you. Rick, you first.
Yeah, I'm Illinois Ghost. Thanks for watching tonight. You can find me by searching Illinois Ghost on YouTube or illinoisghost.wordpress.com.
Okay, thank you. Jono.
I'm Jono Jones. Thanks for inviting me today. I'm Brit Chaser on YouTube. Hopefully there'll be some more videos soon.
And you've got your first video up there already, right? It was very good. We liked it a lot. Sean Martinez.
Sean Martinez at Figuring Out Forrest on YouTube, Facebook, or at gmail.com.
All right, Jason Michael.
I'm Jason Eunice. I'm metalsmith by trade. You can find my work at newmexicotinwork.com.
And are you going to restart your programming on YouTube, your live stream on YouTube now that or are you still dealing with Spanish market?
I am still filling orders from Spanish market.
Okay, well,
I'm very blessed to have that problem. I'm not complete, but I'm booked.
We look forward to the return. I really enjoyed those live streams. Shelley Carney.
Well, I'm Shelley Carney, and I just wanted to say for those people in the chat room, if you did send a text to Toby this evening and he didn't get a chance to answer it, along with any voicemails, he is doing a program Friday evening where he'll be answering all of those questions as well as other call-ins. So join us Friday evening for that. And on my part, I will be here tomorrow with Toby doing the book club, and then tomorrow evening at 7 o'clock we'll be on the softer side.me and we'll be doing some live coaching, and the topic for tomorrow evening is find your treasure.
And it's not Fenn's, huh?
It might be. You
Well, it's a
don't
good
know.
topic for
Yeah.
it's a good topic for the quote end of summer unquote.
That's right.
And I've got everybody. So first of all, I want to thank my panelists for joining me in this conversation tonight. It was just as I expected, a great conversation, and of course we'll do it again. Hopefully every Wednesday, and some of these panelists will always come back to them. And I love having these conversations. For me, it is a very special time. Secondly, I want to thank the members that joined us in the chat room on all 4 of our live streams: Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Periscope. I've got a Periscope/Twitter. I want to thank you all for joining us tonight and the questions that you asked. I hope that you found it informative at best and entertaining at least, because we certainly have a good time. I want to thank our moderators for doing the great job that they do and moderating each of our rooms and keeping them moving along. And finally, I know, Shelley and I know that you guys have a lot of choices about where you spend your time on the internet, and YouTube, of course, is growing and expanding in terms of the Fenn search. And we want you to know that we really appreciate your commitment to our channel and the time that you do spend with us. We not only appreciate it, we respect it, and we hope that we can continue to produce the kind of content that justifies that respect. We will continue to do so. We'll continue to raise the level of the quality of our programming and the quality of our content, so that you can always expect to find something new and different on Gypsy's Kiss. So thank you very much for that. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight. It's been a great time. Jason, Michael, let's coffee, okay, brother? All right, okay. Thanks a lot, you guys. Good night, and here's an outro for you.